Hey, welcome to another episode of Sneakers and Strategies. I'm your host, Nick Kastner, Director of Brand and Digital Strategy at Forum Communications. So this week is another week of just me. Recently, I taught a marketing class for a community foundation, and a number of nonprofits joined the class. And one of the things that we talked about, we talked about a lot of things, but one of the things that we covered was brand strategy. And I thought it'd be good if maybe the next few episodes we talked about some of the things we covered in that class. So I'm not going to cover the whole thing. It was a 12-hour class, and it would be 12 hours of content, which would be awesome from a podcast perspective, but not necessarily awesome for you all because I think you'd be bored. So I'm going to cover a couple of those things that we covered over the next 3 episodes of Sneakers and Strategies. And then after that, we have another exciting interview. So today, though, I want to talk about brand strategy. And one of the things that I think businesses, nonprofits, organizations forget is that having a consistent voice is super important. Making sure that people understand who you are, and not only who you are, but what you stand for is important because it really helps them connect with you in a way that they may not be able to otherwise. And the same thing is true for social media. The reason that every one of you that watch TikTok videos and Instagram Reels and scroll through Facebook is because you want to know what people are really doing. And so fake content, as much as canned content that, we as marketers create, and some of that is necessary. It's kind of a necessary evil in terms of how you manage a brand. But there's a lot of that organic stuff that you have to create, and part of it is to show who you are. So let's back up for a second and define a brand. So brand is the way someone perceives who you are. It's like the way they experience who you are. So if you think about, one of my favorite brands, let's talk about sneakers on this show, Nike, the way that people experience the brand. And they typically experience Nike through athletics, or through the way that the shoes fit or the way that they look, the way that, that's how they experience it. It's like a cultural phenomenon. There are other brands that are even local to our community that people experience, like healthcare brands and home services brands, and you actually experience those things just because you interact with the people that are related to the brand. And so if you have a bad healthcare experience with a doctor, then that can actually affect the way that you see the organization as a whole. And that's true for like an HVAC company. If you have a bad experience, you can say, okay, well, those guys suck, I don't want to work with them anymore. And so it all has to do with the way that you are perceived, and that directly reflects on your brand mark, like your logo. So statistically, 88% of consumers say authenticity is important when deciding which brands they like and support. They want to make sure they're dealing with real people. And so that's a big part of branding. And so we at Forum, when I started, one of the things I really wanted to do was to be able to set some groundwork on how we do brand. And we've done that. We've done a really good job of it. And so when clients come to us, many times they'll say, okay, we need a logo. Okay, we can do that. We can build a brand mark for you. But other times it's, okay, how do we talk about who we are? Like who are we as a business? And so those are the more exciting projects for me, because those are the ones where we actually get to say, okay, let's help define that. So one of the ways that we do that is we use what they call Jungian archetype. So if you're familiar with Carl Jung, he was a psychologist. I love his research, published in the 60s. And it's still used today. He's kind of defined a lot of the direction of psychology with his research. But in the work that he did, he found that there are 12 archetypes that are universal. And so when I say archetype, like personalities. And those 12 archetypes you find in culture, you find them in dreams, you find them in movies, you find them in books, in art. And there was a book written by Margaret Mark and Carol Pearson, so you may want to go check this out. It's called The Hero and the Outlaw, Building Extraordinary Brands Through the Power of Archetypes. And in that book, they discuss how you use Jung's research to apply to brands. And so we referred to that in marketing as brand archetyping. And so brand archetyping really is taking those 12 archetypes and can you apply them to who you are as an organization? And so in those 12 archetypes, there are 4 groups. The first of those is we call impact others. So there are three of the archetypes that want to impact the world around them. And so they want to do that through independence, through freedom, and they want to define who they are on their own. The other group, another group of the 3, so there's another group of 3 called connect, that want to connect to others. And they have like an overwhelming urge just to help people and to connect people with others. They want to belong is the reason why. So that's the reason they want to belong. Then there's another group of 3 of the 12 that want to provide structure. Like they're very much about rightness. They want stability. They want to make sure that they build meaningful relationships, that there is social order, and there are brands that attach to that. And then there are 3 additional ones. So the last 3 are on a spiritual journey. So I always think about Yoda and how he's focused on mastery of being a Jedi, but that's really what those on a spiritual journey want to do. And there's actually one that leans really hard into who Yoda is. So we're going to walk through each of these groups today, and I think you'll find that you'll find it really beneficial. So let's start. We're going to start with a group that provides structure. So of the 12, the 3 that really want to provide structure are the caregiver, the ruler, and the artist. And so those are the 3 archetypes that want to provide structure. So the first of those, the caregiver, is selfless. So when you think of a caregiver, you think of like a parent or a nurturer, even a nurse, right, as caregiver. But they tend to be really selfless. They want to be self-sacrificing. That can sometimes lead to self-neglect. So if you think about brands, like some hospital brands, some healthcare brands are very selfless, and especially non-profit healthcare brands where they want to do something for others so bad that even if it hurts them, they want to do it. So they're motivated by compassion, live to help others. A lot of mission brands that would work in the mission field from a faith perspective. Those sort of groups are also a lot of caregiver brands. They're generous, they're protective, they're humble, they're optimistic, they're stable. But the problem is even as a brand, if they're under stress, sometimes they get overly focused and overly involved and put their hand in too many things and forget what it is that they were trying to do in the first place. And the process sometimes make things worse, right? So, given my wife is a huge Disney fan, so we're Disney people. I always think about Marlin from Finding Nemo. If you think about a brand that is more like Marlin, so Marlin is the father of Nemo. All he wants to do is find his son. He's very focused on finding that, and in some cases he makes things worse. He doesn't mean to. He gives refuge to Dory, and sometimes can even feel like a villain, although he's not at all a villain. And it's really because he wants to fix things so bad that he ends up tripping over his own feet. And so I always think about Marlin as a great version of the caregiver, wanting to take care of his son, sometimes breaks things in the process. And so that's an example of the caregiver. The ruler is another one that wants to create order, and there's 2 directions here. So rulers are typically about control, and they want to control power. This can be for something that is a just cause or a corrupt cause. And they tend to be really confident, polished, responsible. In a persona, I would think of someone like Elon Musk, right, who is confident and polished and responsible most of the time, but sometimes feels controlling and cold. That's a good example of a ruler. They desire control, like they really want control. But they're motivated by stability. Like the fear is chaos. Like the reason that they do all the things that they do is because of the chance of chaos. So I would say that a lot of bank brands and financial institution brands fall under the ruler, because I think they all want to be this kind of confident, polished, responsible group. and sometimes it can feel very controlling when you don't get the response you want from a bank. So I think that's the best way to think about the ruler. Now again, not every financial institution is the ruler. If that was the case, then it would be commoditized. Note, some people believe the financial institution space feels commoditized. It could be, get this, it could be because they all fit within the same brand archetype. It's a crazy thought. So brands that stick out and brands that step outside of the traditional archetype for an industry, guess what? Those are the ones that win many times because they're not the typical archetype, because people understand that they stand out a little more than the others. So with a ruler, there are two characters I always think about that are, one is now owned by Disney, one has always been owned by Disney for quite a while. The first is Peter Pan. Peter Pan, although it feels like he's all about chaos, in reality, he wants to build his own structure. Like, he has a just cause. He wants to, he likes to be in control, and although it feels sometimes chaotic at times, he wants to build stability for the Lost Boys. The other option, of course, is like a Darth Vader, who wants control, is confident and polished and responsible, but can be controlling, and he believes he's doing the right thing as well. So, although not necessarily for a just cause. So those are two different alternatives, and I know the Peter Pan reference feels weird, but if you think about it, he really does just want to create a positive environment for the Lost Boys. So his fear of chaos and ability to not control the things that you would think he should have control of. So they tend to be structured. They do believe in hierarchy, so there's the range there. But again, as you're thinking about this, there's actually a survey that I've built. I'll put it on the forum site so you can see it if you want it. That you can take and kind of figure out which one of these your brand is. Okay, next is the artist. So the artist also wants to provide structure, but they're really all about sensory. So if you look at the chart of brand archetypes, the artist is right beside those in the spiritual journey. So it makes sense that the artist may still believe in structure, but that it's more about sensory. So the artist is developing the sight, sound, touch, feel, taste, and the entire experience matters. So at their core, very spiritual, very, very driven toward a spiritual identity or spiritual idea, love abstract concepts and ideas. They're inspired by others. They inspire others. Can be very expressive and imaginative, but also can be perfectionists and melodramatic and can have narcissistic tendencies. This one is pretty easy from a character standpoint. It's Mickey Mouse. So Mickey Mouse is expressive and imaginative. You think about the wizard version of Mickey. But at worst, he can be a perfectionist, can be a little dramatic, and can have some narcissism. Again, think about brands that fit within that scope. I think you may find that Disney themselves may find themselves as an artist. So that's the first three. So there are 9, so we're going to go through a few more. The next are the group that want to go on a spiritual journey. So that group, the first one of those is the innocent. The innocent is simple and optimistic. Innocent brands value simplicity. They're highly optimistic. They seek happiness. They can be gullible. They always see the glass half full. Tend to be moral and honest, but they can be gullible and sometimes boring, sometimes childlike in their behavior. You see a lot of brands that target children in this space. And they can be fulfilled and want their customers to be fulfilled. So the characters that you think about from a Disney's perspective, for me, it's always Snow White. Like, Snow White is the innocent. So you think about brands that feel like Snow White. Those would be innocent brands. Also, too, Forrest Gump is also in that space. So just to give you some dichotomy there, Forrest Gump is another one that is an innocent from a brand archetype or from an archetype standpoint, character archetype, and which also can give you some guidance if you're thinking about what your brand might be. Next on the ones that are looking for a spiritual journey is the sage. And so every time I think about the sage, it's do or do not. There is no try. This is Yoda for sure. The sage is focused on knowledge and truth. Success is always dictated by information and getting the information that's needed. We need to learn. We need to gather information, share it, make the world better for it. So sages can be incredibly wise, can be very open-minded, and incredibly well-spoken, but they can also be cold and self-absorbed. And so if you think about Yoda's journey, he actually reaches both those dichotomies. And we see this throughout kind of the Star Wars universe with Yoda. The sage's fear is always being deceived or found incorrect or ignorant. So if you think about your brand, brands that have tons and tons of knowledge but hate to be called out when they're wrong, that can be a sage brand. And in working with clients over the past almost 5 years here at Forum, what I've found is that clients sometimes think there's something and they're not. And so I have a few clients who could be a sage brand based on how their staff works, but they actually lean further into an artist brand. And so it's really funny how you'll find yourself based on staff, and especially in small businesses, you can find that leadership plays a huge role in defining who your brand is. So if your leadership stands in one of these archetypical area, like if they're down the line in one of these, sometimes that's who the brand is because that's the leadership leads them in that direction. So that's the sage. So we're going to move on. The explorer is Indiana Jones. So they're curious. They want answers to life's greatest questions. They like freedom. They like independence. They're high-spirited. But if they get bored, they can be really restless and really flaky. So that's those brands often are pioneering. They're often very rugged, like a Wrangler, those sort of brands, like a Jeep, those brands feel like they can do things that other brands can't. They're outdoor centric. They want to travel down new paths. They love originality. They have really strong corporate cultures. They encourage employees to reach their goals in their own way. But again, they can sometimes forget who they are. They can be really restless, really flaky, create products that may not even be needed just because they're trying to do something adventurous. So that's an Explorer brand. The quote that I always use for the Explorer is Indiana Jones quote, "Roads, we don't need roads." Next, the impact others. So there are three that impact others. The first of those is the outlaw. Now, an outlaw brand, they believe rules are meant to be broken. This is like a Harley Davidson. They are often revolutionary in thought. They want to shake things up, sometimes for the goods of others, sometimes for personal gain, and sometimes just for a good time. They can be easily provoked to anger. They don't mind being feared. They feel cool. Many times they're counterculture, but for that reason, they can also be seen as shady. They also can kind of cross a fine line. They have this line of being really cool or really offensive. And so another brand that I think of when I think about the outlaw is Liquid Death. It's a water brand, so it comes in a can. It looks like a beer can on purpose. So if you're at a party, you can drink water, and people think that you're not drinking water. The character in the Disney space that I always think about is Robin Hood. So he believes rules are meant to be broken to get what he wants. That's the outlaw. Next is a magician. And so there's a lot of argument about whether or not a brand like Disney is the magician or the artist. I believe they're probably more of an artist. Others believe they're more of a magician. I think you can make arguments either way. But the difference is the artist tends to want to provide structure. The magician wants to impact others. And I honestly would say that with Disney as a brand, that it depends on who the CEO is. So just keep that in mind as, again, you're thinking about leadership. So the magician also wants to impact others, just like the outlaw does, but they tend to do it through science and knowledge. So Walt Disney himself is known as the embodiment of this archetype. They are transformative, creative, and want to leave a mark on the world. So they can be very charismatic, very driven, but they also can be manipulative and distant. So you can't get in their way if they have an idea. And here's the thing, they have tons of ideas. So they believe in transformation, want to create attention. New is never bad. However, they do need to help keep the ideas on the road to completion. And so again, like if you think about leadership of Disney corporate, I think you could go this kind of magician route or the artist route based on who the CEO is, because some want more structure, some want more creativity. With that, Mary Poppins is the magician. So if you think about Mary Poppins and how kind of she operates, she's very charismatic, very driven, but very manipulative and kind of in a secretive way. So that is the magician. Next, the hero. So the hero brand is a brand that rises to the challenge. They are ambitious, they are persistent, they value honor above all. They'll go to any means to face their past so they can get better. Sometimes they can be brave and smart, and sometimes they can be really arrogant. They have leadership qualities, not dissimilar from like a Darth Vader and the ruler, but they have to overcome adversity to get to where they are. So that's what helps make them a hero. They have strong imagery, powerful messages. If you think about a lot of military brands, like the U.S. Army as a hero brand, there's a nonprofit that I'm familiar with called Hire Heroes that actually works to help veterans find jobs. That is a hero brand. And the character that always comes to mind for me is Simba. So if you think about brands that feel like Simba, like they had to go on this journey to find who they were, and then when they did, they realized, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be king. And so that is the embodiment of what a hero brand is. Next, the three brands that want to connect to others. And so those three, they tend to be a little bit more, one of them I think many people relate to. The other two are a little harder to fit into. And sometimes they can be danger in trying to connect to others. Like you can lose yourself in trying to connect with someone else. So if you think about a bad relationship, right? Like you are in love with someone, you want to make sure that they feel connected, you want to feel connected to them, and then you lose yourself in the process trying to do that. That's what some of these brands can do very, very easily. So you have to be mindful of that when you're kind of managing what you're trying to accomplish, so you don't lose yourself in the process. So the first of those is the lover brand. The lover brand wants intimacy. They want close relationships with their consumers. They just want to make sure their consumers feel special. They can be passionate. They can be magnetic. They can also become obsessive and dramatic when they don't get their way. They're always focused on aesthetic or appearance. So if you think about brands, and again, I'm trying not to call out brands who fit this, but many times they're ones that make themselves attractive to others or are premium name brands. They want to be attractive, seductive, accepted. But at the heart of it, they just want to belong, and they want to enjoy the moments in doing so. So the lover archetype, and from a Disney character, would be someone like Jasmine. So Jasmine is passionate and has a magnetic personality, but can become obsessive or angry or dramatic when they don't get their way. So they can also become shallow if they're focused only on how the customer feels. So again, easy to lose yourself if you're that sort of brand. The next is the jester. So on the outside, jester brands are funny. Like there are some brands that are just hilarious. They can be clever, they can be unassuming, but at the end of the day, they just want to fit in. They see the world a little differently, as their lens helps them see what other people may not. They're entertaining brands, can make light of a really bad situation, can be carefree, joyful, but also can be cruel and even irresponsible. They tend to be entertainment brands, so gesture brands tend to be comedic in their approach, but they also can be found in like insurances and restaurants. There are some commercials, if you think about where Flow is at right now, that could be considered a gesture brand. And I think a lot of insurance companies actually are trying to lean into this space, but I think that's a thing that you have to be careful with, because some people see insurance as a very serious thing. So it really depends on your target audience. So, and again, being mindful of who you are. So another way that you could potentially lose yourself. Now, the most dangerous of all brands, in my opinion, is the last, and that is the everyman brand. It is one of the most difficult brands to market, because the everyman brand, they're wholesome, they're genuine, they just want to be liked, but they can be very, very friendly. They're very American, like they believe in hard work and honesty and common sense. They can be kind and empathetic, but they do fear being seen as unwelcoming, which leads them to feel withdrawn, which makes them feel not accepted. So a lot of what we do, we talk about fighter brands a good bit, brands swinging above their weight class in terms of, they're small businesses, medium businesses, but they're trying to compete with bigger businesses, and so we're going to fight to do that. The problem is with the everyman, if you feel unaccepted, they can withdraw and believe that no one understands who they are. I've had the privilege of working with a few of these, and it can be difficult because even at the level of leadership, they don't feel connected, or they feel like the world has passed them by. And in doing so, they've kind of become reclusive in how they manage things. So they really have to force themselves to push out of that shell. If they can do that, brands in this archetype can be very, very successful, but you have to not fall into the trap of feeling unincluded. And so that's really the key. So those are the 12 archetypes. You'll see them if you're watching on YouTube. You'll see those on screen. And so that's the podcast today. Last thing. So this is Sneakers and Strategies, and we're supposed to talk about sneakers. So last week I did not do that, but this week I want to make sure we include some sneaker knowledge for you. So one of my favorite shoes is the Nike Air Max 197 Sean Wotherspoon. So if you know this shoe, it is one of the most sought-after shoes. It was voted in 2017 when the shoe came out. It actually, Sean Wotherspoon created the shoe, and it was a competition. He's one of the world's foremost collectors of vintage shoes and apparel, and he submitted this idea for the 2017 Vote Forward competition and won. And so it's a voter-approved design, and it kind of fits 80s culture while drawing influence from vintage corduroy. I happen to have this particular shoe right here. I love this shoe, but I don't wear it very often. I wore them today just because I was going to talk about them. But I think it's a super cool look if you're into, especially, when I was a kid, corduroy was a thing and a popular thing. So, that's why it kind of fits 80s culture. It's a neat addition to a collection for sure. Not easy to find. There are reps out there, so if and some of them are pretty good. So if you're a rep person and you want replicas, those can be available. But it's one that I don't know if Nike will ever release again. But I think it's a cool look, and I know it's a very, very popular shoe. So with that, that's the end of the podcast. Please subscribe on whatever platform that you use. Please like or review the podcast. That's how we survive in the podcast world. And if we can help you at Forum. So Forum Communications is a full-service marketing agency that helps brands find their voice in a crowded marketplace. So if we can help you, visit forumspeaks.com, and I'll work to make sure that we get that brand archetype survey up on the website in the next few weeks. So if you're curious, you can check it out. All right. Thanks, and have a good day.